Let's get into our Finance Tuesday conversation. CPA Robert Kamwara is the member of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya Legislative Affairs Subcommittee. He is a tax expert. Tax experts mostly usually they have studied law and they've studied CPA, and others even have CPS. I don't know which of those Robert has. How many of those do you have, Robert? Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Eric?
Very well. Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room. So you are a lawyer?
Yes,
Root?
I am.
You're a CPA.
Yes, I am.
What else?
That's enough for now.
Tuachie hapo. Kenya. You're a taxpayer.
Yes, I am.
And a tax expert.
Yes.
Welcome to the hot seat of the
Thank you
Situation
very much,
Room.
Eric. Yeah.
So, Robert,
Yes.
City is going to welcome you with the day's proverb. And this week, the proverbs are from
the Republic of Zambia.
Okay.
Yes. If your luck deserts you, even cold food burns.
If your luck deserts you, even cold food burns. What's the interpretation of this one, Robert?
It's quite heavy that if everything leaves you, then you have nothing. Even the very basic that you expect to be there will not be there for you. That's true. That's what's happening.
When?
Even now.
Where?
Everything has gone away.
Oh, my goodness. Really?
Yeah. Even our basic right to eat bread is no longer there. It's going to be taken away soon.
Let's start with this bread story, by the way. Okay? So, we have seen politicians saying, hii mambo ya mkate wachana na propaganda ya watu, mkate tunapandisha. What does the finance bill propose when it comes to bread?
The finance bill now wants to rope in bread to be amongst the taxable commodities that we have. And remember, worldwide, what we do, taxation is not meant to press mwananchi or to press the citizens. It's meant to equalize most of the people and to collect revenue so that it can run government. But when you start earning or start getting revenue from basic commodities like bread, then you're suppressing the basic, the pockets of most of the people. Remember, this is a commodity that you need to consume every morning. And the so-called ngwashes and the sweet potatoes and the other things that we used to find cheaply, or what we'd call very healthy products to eat, are no longer affordable. The best we can rush to is go to the canteen and get a loaf of bread. But now it's going up by 10 shillings. So by 10 shillings, we're talking about, in a month, we're talking about over 300 shillings going up. And that's not little money.
That's a lot of money.
Yes. Remember, most of the people earn for the day. So you earn your money in the morning, you earn your money in the evening to spend it the following day, and there you are. So it's quite a press.
All these things that, because we have had very many conversations, Robert, on the finance bill. And there is cry from all quarters. Now, hustlers yesterday were crying to the finance committee and saying, come on, we're going to be affected. Manufacturers have complained. We are going to have, in the next hour, we're going to talk to Association of Startups and SMEs. They have also presented their petition to Parliament and they're complaining.
Right.
We have heard from the financial institutions, they're complaining. Insurance sector is complaining. The mobile money sector is complaining. It appears like everybody's complaining. Now, of course, you understand this finance bill. I'm sure you have looked at it back to forth and front to back. Are there good things in the finance bill?
There are quite a number of good things.
Okay, let's start with some good things.
So for the employed, remember we had the minimum amounts that would contribute for pension, the 20,000 shillings, for our saving for the future. That now has gone up to 30%, to 30,000.
What does that mean?
That means that if you are on a salary of 50,000 shillings, for example, and you're good enough to invest, you want to save most of it. So previously you would save up to 20, you would contribute 20,000 without being taxed. Only 30,000 would be taxed. Now we are saying out of the 50,000, 30,000 is what is going to be taxed, and we shall start computing the 10% or the 15% from the 30,000.
I don't get it.
All right.
Please.
Okay. So this is what you're saying.
Start slowly.
Okay. Let me make it simple for you to understand. It's a new policy that has come up to encourage people to save for the future, through their pension through the pensions.
Okay.
So if your salary minimum is, as we had said, 50,000, ideally you're supposed to start paying pay as you earn
Yes.
from the first shilling. But the budget is philanthropic enough and tells you, previously we're at 20,000, so instead of start deducting your first 20,000, start deducting your first 30,000.
Okay.
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 So this is meant to nab mostly
So meaning
the mid-
shilling 1 to shilling 30 will not be taxed.
Will not be taxed.
We are starting now from the first 30,000 going on.
Right.
Okay.
Now, this is meant to mostly encourage the 100,000, 200,000 earners and above, the middle upper. And the benefits of this is most of these monies that go and sit in the pension can be used by government to run other schemes that they may want to have. And remember, the pensions, these are the insurance companies are the ones who will lend to government. They're the ones who will build houses for people.
Right.
And then the economy continues growing.
What does it mean to my payslip? Am I
To your
taking
payslip?
more home because of this move?
Yes, you'll take more.
Okay.
Yes.
So from that 50,000 shillings, if previously I was taking X, now I have some more.
That's right.
That will be my net.
Right.
Okay. Another good thing?
Another good thing is the VAT threshold. Previously, if you were to have paid 5 million shilling, if you were to have started paying VAT at 5 million income, now you move to 8 million. So your first, your incomes have to be up to 8 million shillings for you to register for VAT.
This is for small businesses.
For small business.
So for a small SME, if you open, you don't have the VAT, mandatory VAT obligation.
Yes.
If your revenues per year
Right.
are below 8 million.
That's right.
Okay. Previously it was
It was 5 million
5
shillings.
million.
Yeah.
So now, yes, a bit more wiggle room. What's the benefit of this?
The benefit of this is to allow startups to operate for some time until they are able to generate money enough to start paying taxes. So it's an incentive for farmers, for mostly small businesses, including farmers and including businesses that run down here, that can be allowed to start earning incomes up to the time they are getting to 8 million shillings. So that's an incentive.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are amongst the many other benefits that we are having. We have the investment allowances that are there. These are targeting mostly large investors, people coming in from investments with large amounts of money. The tourism industry also has an incentive that has been given to them. Surprisingly, most of the people are saying that the reason some of these incentives have been done are targeting specific businesses and specific individuals. And the demerits are also targeting specific individuals, certain businesses.
Right.
So it's both ways. Ideally, a budget should be one that gives incentives to people in growing their businesses. But if it's going to be a disincentive, then at the end of the day, the economy is going to feel it. Yes.
Are we looking at anything that, if we look at broad strokes,
Yes.
for the nation as a whole,
Yes.
where people will be able to look at it, whether it's a demerit or a merit?
Yes.
What are we looking at that affects Kenyans in a good way, that we'd be welcoming, that Kenyans would be welcoming of, and say, okay, this is a good thing?
It's not the current budget that we are having has got very few good things, so to speak. You look at it and see what is it how is it affecting the common mwananchi in a good way. I would really be struggling to get something that is very good in that budget.
Wow.
However, the budget has been reduced with about over 200 billion shillings. That is one good thing. They have cut down on it.
Let's pause.
Okay.
When we say they have reduced this current financial year's budget, how
Yes.
much was it?
It's past 3 trillion
So
shillings.
it's 3.6.
Yes.
Is it?
Right.
So are we saying that the next year's financial budget is 3.4?
Well,
Because that's when you can say now the budget has been reduced.
yes, the budget has been cut, and ideally what that means is expenditure has, when they have, in the long run, when they look at everything that they are spending, they've seen that there is a window that they can reduce their expenditure. And remember, a budget is both expenditure and income.
Yep.
So all of a sudden now it is clear that we are overspending on certain things. And yesterday I think we saw a few things coming up. The budget cut on, whether it's directly or indirectly, the budget cut on the former president's expenditure. There are many expenditures that can be cut down on, unnecessary expenditure. And the issue of integrity and the issue of accountability comes in. The issues of governance, we can now see that these are areas that we can start exploring to ensure that our budget is proper.
But Robert,
yes,
has the budget actually been reduced?
The budget, as they are saying it, has been cut.
What is the proposed expenditure for the next financial year?
Well, the percentage is not realistic. It could be barely 1%.
What's the proposed expenditure in the next financial year?
Slightly past 3 trillion.
Is it not 3.9?
Yes.
Okay. So from 3.6 this year to
Yes.
3.9 next year.
Yes.
Where is the reduction?
But can't you see it? It's clear. The reduction is supposed to be an imaginary figure. You are supposed to extend
imagine the figure.
your sense of imagination, because 3.6 to 3.9 normally is an increase. But in this instance, you're being asked to imagine that it has reduced. So please.
Imagine that it has
It's
reduced.
imaginary.
Yes.
So there was a conversation, yes. It
Yes.
started at 4.2. You know,
Right.
what they wanted to have spent was
Right.
4.2.
Right.
And then they reduced the figure from 4.2 to 3.9.
Right.
And they said, we have reduced the budget. Is that realistic?
Well,
You wanted to spend 4.2 from 3.6. Then you come and say, instead of spending 4.2, we'll spend 3.9 from 3.6. Where is the reduction?
Well, we leave it to them to tell us. That's why we have public participation. And remember, this time round, Eric, the public participation has been heavy. We are yet to see the fruits of the public participation. Last year, we did a lot of public participation. Everything was taken to Parliament, just as it has been done this time, like it will be done today or tomorrow. But at the end of the day, during the debate time, the parliamentarians actually even added more expenditure. I remember when they were talking about the affordable housing. Yeah. So they argued it out, and at the end of the day, when it came out from Parliament wrote its own issues.
Budget.
Yes, it did its own budget. And remember that the representatives of the people.
Let's look at this. You know, I think we've been, for the last couple of weeks, we've been asking questions about, you know, what this all looks like. Public participation comes to an end today. Or rather, it came to an end yesterday. Came to an end yesterday. And largely, the hue and cry has been, or I don't know that I've run into anybody or heard anything whereby those involved in public participation have said that, you know, this is great, let's embrace it with both hands and then move forward,
Right.
except for the proponents, you know, of such. So across the board, there seems to be major dissatisfaction with the proposals that are being made. And I think the foreboding thing here is that it's possible that the recommendations in the finance bill will be passed. But I think it is important for us to look at really what it means, some of these proposals that are being made. Now, from what we see, is it possible for the country to move in a positive trajectory with these proposals that we are seeing being made in the finance bill? Is it possible?
Yes,
Mind
it is.
you that this is over and above what already sits in terms of responsibility for taxation for Kenyans. Is it possible to move forward with these new proposals that are being then brought about?
Yes, it is. And why I say that is, remember, most of the proposals that are being made to reduce the taxation that people are being asked to pay. For example, the proposals that most of the people in public participation have made is to cut down on the...
Oh, no. I mean the proposals that are being put in the finance bill
the ones
right
that are
now.
being put in.
Yes, yes.
Definitely with the proposals that are there, they are meant to run the government as it is. Unfortunately, if you look at the expenditure that we have, the expenditure is too high. And the points at which we expect to collect this money, we have seen of late the Kenya Revenue Authority has been crying off going at a deficit, right? So if they're not able to collect, then they're not able to run the government as it is. But with the proposals that we have in place, if they can actually be implemented, then we expect that on the other side, government should run as it's supposed to do. I don't know if I answer your question. However, with a shortfall, without collecting what they're actually saying, then it will be very hard to run government.
Isn't it counterproductive what we're looking at here? I mean, I think CT alludes to this quite often, that the very thing that you're trying to achieve, you are unable to achieve it because if you raise the prices on set, because essentially that's what we're looking at, right?
Right.
A price increase because of the fact that a tax has been applied.
Right.
Whether it's transport, food, oil, whatever, it goes higher. So the likelihood of people to continue the purchase, which is what you're banking on in order to collect that revenue, the likelihood of them continuing then dips. So then you lose out on what it is that you were seeking to do in the first place. It seems almost easy for me to understand. Why wouldn't we be able to get that?
I think you bring it home by now bringing it that way, because you see, the same people you're taxing are the same people you expect to be paying these taxes.
Yeah.
Okay, these people you're pushing to pay the taxes, you expect them to get money from the moon and be able to pay the taxes. Remember, most of them are employees who have businesses. These are the same people you expect to finance this budget, so it will be pressing them too much. However, if the collection is, you see, that's the reason why we're talking about the expansion of the tax base. And the issue of the motor vehicle tax comes in, where they talked about the wealth tax. And they are assuming that if they see you and you're driving a nice car, or you're driving a car out there, you have not paid your taxes. That's actually the punishment that they're calling. It's actually putting us on sin because you're driving a car. Now, if they collect such kind of taxes, this time when through the insurance, you'll end up, maybe you find yourself you're in default of paying your insurance. Maybe you're staggering on your installments for paying the insurance.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? If you had a plan to inject into a small business somewhere, that one stalls for some time. If you're planning to take your children to school, to change your children from one school to another, where basically we are not, the provisions of government is to provide you with education, to provide you with proper medication, free medication in itself, but now you have to spend. And you're actually doing it on behalf of government. And that's what you're saying. You should be getting a relief instead. If I have to go to hospital and go to spend money at Nairobi Hospital, I was supposed to have used my taxes to go to Kenyatta Hospital, where medication should be free, or Mama Lucy.
Yeah.
But now I don't have that relief because I have to spend a bit more on those kind of expenses. So fine, I would say if it's true that we were actually evading tax, then it's a good budget. But ideally, you were sure that all of us are being taxed heavily.
You know, I refuse to believe, in all honesty, that all these experts we have, economists, finance people, in KRA and in the Treasury, came up with what we are seeing here. They live in this country. They know exactly where it pains and where it pinches. This country has a habit. We see it very, very often. Something is discussed, a document is produced. What comes out later, people are, excuse me, this is not what we agreed on.
True.
This is not what we wrote. And it appears that this is what we're dealing with yet again. We know we borrowed from IMF. And if you've lived as long as I've lived and you've seen the fingers and the machinations of IMF and World Bank in our affairs, this is it again. What I worry about the IMF and what concerns me is not that they're tinkering with us, they're experimenting. These things that they're telling us to do, where have they worked? Where? Can they tell us a blueprint that tells us, okay, IMF, you've given us money, we've got that, we've understood it, it's supposed to help us, we also get that, but okay. These things that you're forcing the Kenyan government to do, where have they worked? Where have they been implemented to the letter, and where have they worked? Because you don't even need to understand economics to know that this thing, do you really need to study economics to understand that when the price of bread goes up, life becomes difficult? You don't. Do you really need to understand that when you tax vehicles to the rate that, whatever rate it is, that suddenly everything about transportation will become impossible? You don't need to even go to school to understand that. It's very simple. So why does somebody think that they can implement all these things that will not just make the life of the citizenry of this country difficult, it'll make the lives of the citizenry impossible?
The World Bank and IMF are probably talking to you directly.
I'm talking to them.
Back as your leaders borrowed left, right, and center, and they ate the money, and you did not take action on them. And now they're telling you directly. Now you see, it's you to pay. Kenya's biggest conversation is having a finance bill Tuesday conversation with CPA Robert Kamwara. He is a member of ISPAC's Legislative Affairs Subcommittee. The budget 2024-2025. What's in it? What's working? What will not work? There's been this conversation about, even you said it many times, cutting back on our expenditure, making sure that we are managing our expenditure, making sure that we are doing what is absolutely necessary with the little money that we have. Do you see that in government?
We are at that stage in life where we are growing. Remember, 1963 was our date of birth, so to speak. Kenya was born that time. And now we are headed up there. And the country now is about, how old, 60 years?
Yes,
slightly past 60 years. So let's take the lifespan of the country to be a bit longer, not like a human being. But now this person can speak. And this person started by crawling, this person now can walk around, run, and do all those things. Now we've got to a point where people can speak. Years back, during the previous two other regimes, let's talk during the Moi's time, we couldn't participate and talk about all these things as it is. Right now, there is public participation going on. And a bit more now, there is openness and accountability. Chapter 12 of the Constitution, Public Finance, talks about openness and accountability. I can say at least people now can speak. But is there openness? Is there accountability? To some extent, it is now there. You can see the Auditor General now is not only auditing books for 5 years back as it was before. Now she's coming as closer as last year, and this year's expenditure, she's looking to some of these things. So there is an attempt to that. Although I can say it's not 100%, but there is a good attempt.
So we're getting there.
We are getting there.
But are we cutting back our expenditure?
We need to do that,
William
but we are
Ruto
not.
at first addressed Parliament as president, he said, among the things that I want to make sure we do in this administration is reduce on how much we are spending. In fact, I'm instructing the National Treasury to come and tell Parliament how we can cut back 300 billion shillings in that 2022-2023 budget. I don't know whether they did, but he's been talking about that we are, going to spend only what we can necessarily afford. Do you say, Patrick, that just looking at the government expenditure and where money is going and just casual looking, that we are actually now being more careful with our expenditure?
I don't think we are. Why do I say that? I try to look at things a bit drastically, a bit drastic, like look at when COVID came. All of a sudden, we used to move in crisscross people's offices, go to have meetings, and to move from one country to another, go to the New York, fly and come down. All of a sudden, we started doing things on Zoom. That completely cut our costs by over 1,000,000%. So if we are to go that direction, if we have such kind of a percentage, I try thinking on things to the extreme. If we are to cut down on costs, we completely have to have a different a change in our thinking, completely. Even the way we do things, the way we run our offices, the way we operate, the way we travel out of the country, and the way we do things generally. So that's the only way we can have a proper budget cut. Because with the current situation, if you look at most of these things, we simply just try and do the same things that were done those years. Bei ya mkate, we cut on beer, sin taxes. That is, we oscillate around the same area. Nothing new, nothing when it comes to expanding, what we call expanding the tax base. It's nothing so creative. So we completely need to get a sitting of people who understand what this is. And remember, we had Mzee Kibaki when he came into power. He sat down with his few technocrats, people who had understood from session paper number 1 all through. And they said, let's implement some of these things. We have all these good things that have been put in the cabinets. And as they say, they are accumulating dust. If we could get these experts who could sit down and now look at how we can change things. And we don't not only bring in those old experts, but also bring the digital people, the Gen Zs who have got these new ideas who now are being put into taxation. And let's sit down with them and let's see how we can change the whole of this thing. This also may go all the way down to the issue of changing our constitution and some of the way things are being done. And maybe that's when now we'll see a budget cut.
when we change the law, there will be a budget cut as opposed to folks just doing what they're meant to do according to the same law. According to the same law, it's already prescribed that there's certain things that you must do in a certain way. And I think this all boils down to folks just not doing what they're supposed to do, not just because of their moral upstanding, but even what the law says that you should actually do. The very beginning of the same law that governs this nation is that there's power that's vested amongst the people. And look at the very same action of public participation that took place over the last couple of weeks. That people are saying one thing in one voice. There's no discordance here. Where would it be that they listen to what the people say? And the fear is that there will be regard for what the people say, but in terms of implementing the voices of the people, where does that come in?
This is how I look at it. Chapter 12, as you have talked about public participation, and we talk about openness. I started by talking about Chapter 12 that talks about openness, accountability, and public participation on financial matters. That is where the Constitution ends. It's just say that.
You should participate.
Yes, you should participate.
Okay.
There should be openness. Okay, now if Courier says, I invited people for public participation.
And they were open.
Yes, and we are open. We have let the auditor come in. That's why I'm saying we need to change the law, because now the law needs to get people become smart enough. We have known how to cover ourselves and make sure that we have done the basic things. But how are we implementing this? That's why a change of the law would help, because now we'd get a bit more detailed and now put people to task and say that if you spend more than this amount of money, or if you do this and this at this particular time, then you should be out of office. We cannot continue containing you here. Yeah. If you misuse money and do this, you cannot go ahead and say, I'll still wait for investigations when I'm still in office. So we have the basic things, we have the basic pillars that have been put, which were important for us 10 years. Is it since 2010, Constitution of Kenya 2010, now about 14 years old. But now we need to change things. And that's now when we'll now be able to now have a proper mind change on how to proceed, because we're just oscillating on the same point.
But Robert, do we need any law to tell the parliamentary committee that listen to the people? If all these stakeholders have come and said this is going to have this effect on business, on livelihoods, amend it or do something about it. Do you need any law to actually tell the finance committee this is what the people are saying, and we've got to incorporate their views into this? We can go back to the budget committee and tell the budget committee, you know what, the tax measures, the revenue raising measures that have been presented by the Treasury are unrealistic. So let's have that conversation. Do we reduce the budget, or do we allow this huge deficit that the government is going to borrow? Can they have that conversation? Because it sounds like, Kimani Kuria is boxed between they have to spend 3.9 trillion shillings. They plan to raise 2.7 trillion shillings from taxes. This is what they're saying they need to do. If we reduce anything here, then we are affecting how they operate as the executive. It's like he's boxed. Do we need any law to tell him? No.
Remember, we have this. These are elected leaders.
Yep.
As she said it's the people who have brought them into power, not the executive. And at the end of the 5 years, by the fourth year, 9th month, the executive starts losing its ground. Remember, and who now starts having more power is the people.
Yep.
So what we're saying is, we call ourselves we the people, as the Constitution has put it. Let's look at who we have elected as leaders. So if you have elected people as your leaders, and now it's time for them to go and do what they're supposed to do with the public participation, but they decide to go and start dining with the executive, what do you expect? So when we say about changing of the law, from the point at which we are saying we have a whole chapter on legislature. In the Constitution, we have a whole chapter. Does it cover what we are supposed to be getting? Times have changed. Do you think that chapter on legislation is up to date? Is it current? Yeah. That's why we're saying we could be dealing with outdated laws.
It is possible, but I want to change that discussion completely and ask the question to the organization you belong to. A very powerful organization indeed. Very powerful.
ISPA Corel SK.
I am talking about the body that brings together all the people who understand accounting and finance.
Yes,
together.
ISPAC.
Yes, because even our Auditor General is a member of that.
Of the institute.
Yes, and people whom we talk about, Chairman of the Finance Committee, members, all these people. Let me ask the question.
Yes.
Has the organization ever sought to ensure, beyond what we're now doing, communicating to the Mwananchi through the media, through other avenues, so that they actually understand their obligation and what they need to do? Why do I say this? Because we're discussing money here. And the people who actually understand how we ought to go about using it to make the lives of the people better are actually people like you. You understand details. You do this wrong, this goes completely awry. I ask the question because if the sovereign doesn't fully comprehend the consequences of their not doing their duty by holding their leaders to account, then woe betide them. They will suffer.
That's right.
We have countries in the EU that have suffered as a result of similar things, but they took a different path. I'm talking about Greece. Greece was known for one thing. People often underdeclared what it is that they earned, and so whatever they paid was minuscule, even if you looked at the categories of taxpayers. And it became something that was national. People underdeclaring and paying. So cumulatively, you'll find they've paid probably 15% of what ought to have been paid to the government. And so it is explained the government kept getting into serious financial problems. Okay? People talk of the Kibaki era. In the Kibaki era, something very unique happened. People started paying taxes.
Willingly.
Yes, they were paying. That's the thing, they were paying. And that is the reason why the government could tell the lenders, just hold on, just give it, we need to sort our things out. A whole year went by, no development as we consolidate and organize ourselves, and then we started moving forward. Now, I'm saying this because whenever something is talked about and examples are given of other countries, we actually forget that we've done similar things in the country, which means once it's been done, we now know it can be done. But do our citizenry understand what their role is? Because sometimes I think it's not that they don't want to, they don't know what to do. They are stuck. They are just completely stuck, dealing with everyday problems and then looking at this gigantic issue, and the people who are supposed to represent them doing what they do best, avoiding the representation. The sovereign is stuck.
I can carry the blame for the institute, if you may want to put it that way.
Yes.
Ideally, there is ignorance, but again, Mwananchi's involvement in most of these things is meant to be done by his representatives. That's why he elects people who are informed. And he'll take to parliament an accountant, a doctor, a medical doctor for that case, an engineer, and a journalist, somebody of your knowledge and experience. And we expect them to do that. And as I've said once again, I think change of laws on how we have our representation is very important. Remember, some time back, we had the 2/3 gender rule. That time, what was of great interest was ensuring that we have a proper representation of both male and female in parliament or in leadership. Is that what now we are looking for? Maybe we're looking for a bit more than that. And that's why we're saying change of laws would help, because we need to relook again. Now we are 24 years we are 14 years into our Katiba, our old Katiba. Nationally, since 1963, we have to put on the graph. We are so old to this extent. Time to start rethinking, because come next year, come the other year, the 5-year term of President Ruto will be over, and we'll be still on the same thing, debating on bread, very embarrassing, debating on fuel, and other small taxes that we should be thinking of greater things.
How can you guys help? Like City is asking, how can ISPAC, the Institute of Certified Public Accountants, actually help steer this ship in that direction? Because you hold, like, for example, you as a committee of the legislative affairs in ISPAC, you are the ones who deal with our parliamentarians who are members of ISPAC, but also who are in charge of finance, of budgets. You have members of ISPAC who is the cabinet secretary for the National Treasury.
Right.
Member of ISPAC who are also sitting in the President's Advisory Council. And all of them. So you've got influence. At that level, there's influence. And then below that, there is awareness creation. And that's what City is asking. How can ISPAC create more awareness about what to look out for, what to think about when this process ends and we begin the next budget making process and also oversighting implementation of the budget? How can the citizens participate better? What kind of information do they need? What do we need to be looking out for every month on the reports from the National Treasury? What is it that we should be looking out for to make sure that the money that has been earmarked for expenditure in budget is actually going to the right thing? So at the end of the year, when we are now making the next budget, we already know. But you guys did not give Uhuru his money and yet we put it here. So where is the money? But you did not put money in education and yes, it was X amount of money. So where is the money? Where did it go to? What happened here and there? We can ask those questions from an informed point of view.
True. I think City has actually said it. You've actually answered it. Because it's an issue of income and expenditure, let's have a bit more of transparency. And that's where ISPAC comes in. ISPAC comes in through the various forums that it has to help the people appreciate that this is the way money is being spent. We don't want to start auditing figures for 10 years back. As it has been City, we've been looking at, by the way, who audits the office of the office of the president? Who audits the expenditures? Now, the person who's coming to audit will come and audit President. Well, actually, the current audits that are going on are during Uhuru's time or even earlier. All right, the president is out of office. His team is already out of office. Who audits the State House? Who audits the various parastatals that we have? That's what we're saying. We need to have ISPAC also, amongst other bodies, being given more strength. We have so many accountants out here who can go around and look at numbers and look at figures, but they're not empowered to do that because they've not been given the ability and the resources to get into training. However, clearly speaking, we need to have a bit more of accountability. And this starts with our leadership. Yes. For us to allow ISPAC, for us to allow LSK to speak, because they're talking right now. We have Kuria, who is a member of the Institute. We have all the lawyers who have been there ever since. But people are not, their voices are not being heard.
No, you are in a position to hold them to account.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because then what the question is then what is this, what is how potent is the sound of the lobby when it comes? I think of, professional bodies or organizations in other jurisdictions who are very, very clear about the position. It does seem as though we have a lot of the organizations or bodies speaking after the fact.
Yes.
When it has already been floated, when there is a paper out, when there are proposals in the finance bill out, then there's a flurry of activity and this professional body is speaking, the other one is speaking, and everybody is just rallying around this thing to say, let us. So, and then you say, well, we're not involved in the process. So then I would ask, how loud is the lobbying voice to say, let us then be involved in the process? Because we can represent people, because we have Kenya Association of Manufacturers who come up after the fact. We have associations. How many have we spoken to in the last couple of weeks?
Several.
So where is the voice in saying, in the processes which you will make decisions or make proposals about things that affect our bodies, about things that affect people, can we be involved in those processes? How loud is that voice?
It's getting louder. The last line of defense now is where we are. We're headed to Parliament. Let's wait and see what they're going to do. We expect that they do their job. We've done most of the things. Public participation, ISPAC has done its job. LSK has shouted. Everybody else has shouted. Mwananchi Mama Wanjiko has shouted. Everybody is making noise. Now we've told Parliament through the legislation, we are watching.
We're coming for you.
Yeah,
okay.
we are watching. We are actually want to see how you're going to do it. The executive gave its budgets, gave its numbers, and Mwananchi has said, no. For you to achieve this is not possible. So how do you go about it?
How does Parliament handle it going forward?
And back to leadership again. That's the top tier. Tier 1. Let's see how it goes. And thereafter, let's see how judiciary acts, because we have the various organs, because thereafter people will rush to court and will say, we had said this, public participation, how do the three bodies or the three arms of government come into play?
So it's not over yet. It's not over.
Yes, we are still young and growing. And
This
I can
conversation
see we have
continues.
hope. Yes.
Okay.
It's all not lost.
Roberto, thank you very
Thank
much
you
for
very
joining
much.
us today.
Yes.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.